Hello, welcome everybody. This is part two of our sort of start of the year talent talk with our friend Hung. About 10 days ago, we got together and we were talking about blockchain and we were talking about artificial intelligence and we were talking about all sorts of stuff like that. And we basically had to skim quite a lot of it because we didn't really have enough time. So we're just gonna carry on from where we left off. We might go back to a couple of subjects that I think we needed to go into in a bit more detail. Hung, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
Not
For
really,
anybody that
mate.
doesn't know you?
Just get on with the chat. I think what is exciting for me isn't about Hung Lee or Adam Gordon. It's about what we were talking about, Adam. And I agree. There was like lots of stuff that we could have continued, probably could have continued in the pub, to be honest with you, had the geography kind of permitted. So yeah, let's just dive into it, man.
Okay, so we talked quite a bit about blockchain. We'll skip that one. Let's go a bit more into automation. The kind of stuff that's getting automated. Hold on a second. I'm just going to put Bill on silent for a second here. Right. The kind of stuff that's getting automated. Where is what's the purpose of humans going to be by the end of this year in recruitment?
I think humans will have a massive role to play in recruitment. Automation, I think you can look at it in two sort of major ways, in the sense that number one, it's going to be its impact will be uneven across different industry sectors. So certain sectors will feel it apparently and very quickly. Others, it will just simply go by them, and it will be a kind of an abstract irrelevance. And the second theme is automation, I think, will be selectively applied to certain tasks. It won't be a case where the entire job's going to go. It's simply going to be part of the job, particularly when you're looking into recruitment. Part of that job will simply be supported by an automated tool. And it will be the stuff that we want to get rid of. You know, the scheduling of interviews, the booking of meeting rooms, all that kind of palaver that really sucks in my estimation, maybe 30% of a recruiter's time. Massive waste of time and resource and all the rest of it. That should just go. And human beings, human recruiters will get on with the work that machines cannot do, which is, to get into an intensive human interaction. It's important stuff to talk about, job discovery and the future, change of life and all that type of stuff. That's not going to be replaced by any machine anytime soon.
Well, are you sure? Because Facebook says it knows you. Well, Cambridge Analytica says that Facebook knows you better than you know yourself. Interview, this amazing AI thing in Israel, says that you can measure the depth of the human heart without being human. I mean, is what you're saying a little bit defensive from a human perspective, or do you really think that humans are needed to do that stuff?
No, I think this probably a little bit more complexity to it, in the sense that if you took it from an abstract point of view, yes, maybe a machine or an algorithm can absolutely kind of objectively make the comment, this person is the best fit for that job. But where it gets messy is that as soon as that person, you move it into reality and you've got to get this person to do the job, he's not going to do that without some sort of human interaction. So even though the human is less efficient, let's say, in trying to marry sort of the capability with the need, you're still going to need to have a human being to massage that deal across the line. And I think that's going to be the case until human beings of all types are still in the activity of work. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's almost as if we don't trust objective reality as it is. I mean, Trump is a good example of that. And one thing I'm thankful for the Donald being up there is he's actually revealed a fundamental truth, which is very uncomfortable, which is there is no access to objective reality. And we kind of are all people that build our worldviews on narratives, on stories, on things that we like to believe are true. And when we're looking at job discovery and hiring people and finding a new work or whatever, we've told ourselves a narrative a little bit. And the machine is not going to be able to persuade us about a narrative.
And is the hiring manager alone ever going to be able to do that job that you're talking about? The human aspect of it.
Oh, you mean like basically the recruiter
Seal the deal.
Seal the deal. Ultimately, I think he should, to be fair. I mean, maybe it's kind of a two-way thing. The recruiter might work in tandem with a hiring manager. Maybe the recruiter provides the guidance, provides the high level, does the logistics, all that type of stuff. The hiring manager doesn't need to get involved there. But ultimately, if the person is going to be working next to the hiring manager should care about that.
You just said the logistics could get automated, and you've just said the recruiter could do the logistics.
It would be AI.
I'm a bit more skeptical about the need for humans in 80% of what human recruiters were doing 5 years ago.
I think that's slightly pessimistic, but you're entitled to that view. Who knows? We're speculating on the future, aren't we, Adam? So we don't know. But what I would say is that it's not necessarily about efficiency is the main point. It's also about this human need to work with other humans. I think it's starting to go away. Where it will go away probably sooner is in things like remote work, and where tasks are sort of decoupled a little bit from the human being. I absolutely see that will be, or that will feel like a fairly automated thing to do. But if we're still getting people together in companies, then I believe human beings and human recruiters will still play quite a large role.
Yeah, let's talk about that subject. So we did talk about it a bit last time, but this whole thing around the changing workforce and the gig economy and people working from home, and my wife runs a marketing team, and she's got people in her team in India, she's got somebody in her team in France, people in London. She's doing it from Scotland, and it's very much a team they're all working in office buildings for her company, but they're all in different, it's virtual. You think that's the future?
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt about it. And it'll ultimately be a cost driver. If you think about a lot of the society problems that we have currently, they're based on the idea that firstly, all the jobs that people want to do in a certain place, and everyone needs to kind of relocate to those places, which drives up the property prices, the house prices, and everything else. Then
San Francisco.
Yeah, London, the same stuff. I mean, we talk about the housing crisis in the UK, that there is no housing crisis in the UK. You and I can go to Stoke right now and buy a house for probably 20 grand. There is no housing crisis. Right, I know. I'm sorry to use Stoke as an example. Let's use my own town as an example, Middlesbrough. You can buy a town in a TS22 postcode for about 10 grand.
That was a Freudian. You just said we could buy a town for that much.
Yeah, you can do it. So if the question isn't about housing stock, it's about basically where the jobs are located. And they're located in the big metropolitan centers, which draws all the people in, which drives up the house prices. Now, the only reason why people want to do that is because there's this idea that we need to get everyone in the same physical room in order to have a company. But as your wife has demonstrated, that's not the case. I actually spoke to a very interesting recruiter yesterday, Clément Pergot. Hello, Clément, if you're listening to this, which he probably isn't. Works for a French, a French ride sharing app called Each. And they're based like an Uber for France, essentially. But they have a remote first culture, not a kind of a remote maybe, remote first. Which basically means their default is that you're distributed. And he told me of a very interesting story of when they do have group meetings, even the guys that are on site physically in the Parisian office go to separate rooms in order to have a video call, in order to preserve the concept of remote. So everyone is you don't get three guys around a screen. They'll get three guys in separate screens in separate rooms because they want to have everyone in the same level of feeling as if they're no different from everyone else.
Do you not dilute the company's DNA a little bit when you do that, though? I mean, do people not like? Because there's something about I like the concept of agglomeration, whereby you bring people together and the sum is bigger than the parts. The whole is bigger than the parts, and magic things happen when you put people in the same room. It's going to disappear a bit if that's the future.
No, and I'm quite strong with that, Adam. What I would say is each company needs to evolve its own DNA and its own culture. And I agree, there's certain people, and I've worked with those people that want to physically be in the same place. You know, they want to have that over the desk type of repartee and all the rest of it. But there's other people that really don't like that because it's lots of interrupt and they can't focus and whatever. So what I like about this company is that they've made a clear decision that they're going to be a remote first company. In which case the people that they recruit are going to be intrinsically more comfortable being distributed. In which case there won't be any seismic shift of you know, a sense of crisis that they've shifted from one context to the other. People that want to work closely together in a team probably wouldn't find a particularly good home there, even though they do have kind of a big office, and you know, they can also cater for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So we're going to bring Danny on now to talk about something that I'm fascinated with and that everybody's talking about. So let's see. Here he is. Okay, so welcome, Danny Hodgson. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself in 1 second, but yeah, if I just do that now, and then I'll ask you what I was going to ask you.
So before I do, I'd just like to say I used to like Home. I used to like him a lot. However, I've just found out he's from Middlesbrough, which makes me love him. So as a fellow borough lad, it's great to see Middlesbrough being...
Are you actually also with a TS22 postcode, Danny?
TS19, actually.
Mate, is that the wrong side of the tracks, even for Middlesbrough? I think it might be.
It is.
Yeah. Well, we obviously need to get together and have a natter about that.
It does. So yeah, it's good to see that Middlesbrough is fast becoming the epicenter of all in-house social recruitment.
Yeah. Okay, Danny. What do you tell us what you do? Give us an outline.
So I work at an organisation called Foresight, and we're on a bit of a crusade to upskill the in-house recruitment world by empowering them with this thing called a recruitment forecast or a hiring plan.
Okay, so when you say upskill, I mean, that sounds like you're providing a service, but I think you're providing a technology. Which are you doing?
So both, actually. So not only do we provide the technology, we provide the service behind it to help them utilize the data that we provide them. So they're using the data in the best possible fashion. So it's not just a case of, here's Foresight, off you go, let us know how you get on. We're not that kind of company. We're about, here's a different way of working. This is a bit of technology that will facilitate that. Now let's look at the data. Let's help you interpret it to take it to the next level.
All right. Okay. So before I ask a bit more about that, what does it feel like to be Kim Kardashian of recruitment? Let me explain. You've got a lot of like Hodgsonites on one side, and then you've got a lot of haters in the last couple of weeks. Do you want to just explain what you've been up to?
Yeah, so I might have made a bit of a comment in terms of directed at the kind of the contingent recruitment agency world, which seems to upset a lot of people because it lifted the lid on some shady practice that's going on there. Am I afraid to do that? No, absolutely. I think if we can all come together and collaborate to bring best practice at any kind of sphere of recruitment, whether it's agency or in-house or RPO, we should all be doing it.
And with hindsight, do you still maintain?
That's product number 2, hindsight, by the way.
With hindsight, do you still maintain that recruiters, potential candidates should put the phone down to a recruiter if they don't tell them who the job's with?
Yeah, I do actually. So I think massive change requires massive action, and if that kind of almost grandiose a statement solves a portion of the problem, yes, of course I stand by it.
Okay, what do you think about this?
I think it's an extreme view that Danny has taken. I'm sympathetic with it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I know one of the main frustrating things as a candidate has to be, I actually don't know what job I'm going forward for. Sounds ridiculous, and it probably is going to be something that has to go away at some point. So maybe Danny's kind of radical call to action is what's required. I'm kind of thinking I can sort of understand why an agent might want to keep that back just a little bit. Trying to make excuses for an agent. Maybe there's some confidentiality behind that. So at certain levels, there's always going to be some restrictive on it. you're right, Danny. Maybe it is mainly about trying to preserve the opportunity to place the guy. The entire economy of being a recruitment agent is to have the information and kind of be parsimonious with it. Sadly enough,
but shouldn't they be better at their job in terms of having a better relationship with their client, in terms of not necessarily doing contingent, potentially retained, or somewhere in the middle?
Danny, a hiring manager told you yesterday. The head of investment marketing at Invesco said yesterday that she tells her recruitment consultants that they need it to be anonymous because she's got new products coming out and there's competitive advantage that's at risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in that scenario, I'd still argue, is she opening the doors to the best possible talent that's available? I'd say no. If I was her recruitment advisor, I would say this isn't the best approach.
Yeah, no, I don't actually disagree with that. I think that some people will definitely be put off for sure, but there's a difference between like maintaining privacy and getting versus getting the total addressable market as potential candidates. And there's got to be a trade-off sometimes.
Yeah, and I'd say that trade-off should be if every single candidate out there in the world at the same time puts the phone down, something would have to change.
Yeah, okay, cool. Tell us a bit more about forecasting then, because it sounds to me like a very basic concept, and you would have expected that all these big companies that you work with, it's like the number one thing they're doing before they even try and recruit, but it seems like they're not. So tell us about like why do, like if I'm the head of recruitment at Sainsbury's and I'm going, God, we're not even forecasting. We need support with this. What am I doing if I'm not forecasting? What have I been doing until 2017?
It's crazy. It's crazy, isn't it? That's the actual approach that some organisations are still taking. So, having been the head of recruitment and the director of talent acquisition, I've actually physically sat in their seats, and it kind of pained me at that time to think, why are we rocking up to work thinking, oh, I wonder what the hell we're going to recruit today or next week? That's just the way organisations used to do it. And I don't know whether it's because recruitment or in-house recruitment is still a relatively immature function compared to the other ones. We've only been really around for maybe 15 years or so. But the likes of supply chain, finance, procurement, whatever, they all forecast. Yeah, and they do it well because potentially they're a little bit further on. But having sat in the seats of a head of resourcing and having been asked to kind of get the service delivery up. So I've been responsible for designing and building some really, really great in-house recruitment teams. So much so they've won awards and that kind of stuff without forecasting. But with the business wanting more for less, the answer quickly came to the reason why we can't get better is you, Mr. or Mrs. Business, are not providing us this information. And that was about 5 or 6 years ago, a quick kind of network out there to find out who's doing it. Zero. Absolutely no one was doing it well at all. And if they were doing something, it was on Excel. It was manual. It was laborious. So it was kind of at that time we thought enough's enough. Our industry or our service needs to physically change, and that's where it needs to change at the back end. There's all these tools and techniques and things, and people have been investing in their recruitment process at the back end, but hardly anyone was focusing at the beginning because no one really knew how to do it.
So you're on the back foot the whole time. And what's the? I mean, like, do applicant tracking systems not already provide this kind of thing? I mean, is that not no?
No, so we've not come across one single provider.
Okay, so great, big opportunity for sure. Now, the output from the forecast, what's that? That's presumably we need to go and build. We need to go and start pipelining. Yeah,
so effectively, it's when I sat there thinking, okay, well, what do I need? You said it yourself. We need a shopping list of vacancies across a defined period, and that's what we provide. So every single thing that an in-house recruitment team is intrinsically targeted on, whether it's time to hire, if you want to call it time to hire anymore, cost per hire, quality of hire, your diversity and inclusion program, your hiring manager candidate experience, everything is intrinsically linked to having that info, right? So once you get that shopping list, you can start targeting. Right, we're opening a new call center here, we're opening a new store here, we're opening a new plant there. You can physically start to pipeline correctly. Without having that plan, every single thing you do is reactive. There's no getting away from it. So anybody who's working without a forecast is almost verging on the administrating order taking process. And what we need to do as a recruitment function is flip that on its head and start being strategic, advising, providing intelligence back into the business. And we can only do that by being given the information up front.
Absolutely. I see that one of your biggest cheerleaders, Jacob Madson, is here in attendance. For anybody that's looking for some really, really intelligent conversation around talent acquisition and the future of talent acquisition, join Jacob's Facebook group, which is Recruitment Evolution. Now, Danny, thanks very much for coming and joining us and talking us through that. Very interesting. I'm now bringing on screen Hung's friend, Elizabeth Lemke.
Hello.
So, hi, let me just see. Are you here? I can hear you. I can't see.
Here I am.
Okay, welcome. Tell us all who you are and what you do, and yeah, what's hot for you in 2018.
Oh, well, thanks. I'm really happy to be here. I'm Liz Lemke. I'm the former director of HR and global talent for a large automotive supplier. So I'm really looking at it I liked hearing about what is going on in the forecast view. That's one of our big challenges, or was one of the big challenges, is how do we get those pipelines that actually go somewhere, aren't clogged, or also looking at what are those future capabilities that we need and how can we make meaningful developable experiences so that people can actually get there. So me, right now, I'm doing that creative vein of if we don't know, if we only do what we're familiar with, then we won't be able to figure out what we're good at. So I'm using that creative vein. Hung was very kind and said, hey, start a blog. So I'm working on a couple of those things. And then really kind of saying, where are things going? And I think there's a little bit of historical, focusing on technical skills rather than perhaps thinking, as we look to innovation change, what are kind of those skills and capabilities that will also be relevant and needed that perhaps I can't predict. And so how do we get into that happy space? Looking at talent acquisition is very sexy. Talent management, not so much. A little bit of that window dressing, but to say, how can we make sure there are different curves on the same loop? And then perhaps also looking at my career is only as good as my network value. But is that perhaps also a challenge to say, are the right people, if we're looking at innovation, do they really have that digital savviness to have a good, strong network? Or is that perhaps a little bit of a paradigm shift that we need to question? And then the other thing is what we were talking about before, fear and loathing and fear and love of AI. So really help us make more intelligent decisions. Will it challenge us to think about some of our biases, but also to say, where is the business really going? And then to say, okay, awesome statistics, but can they really help us forecast what we need?
Okay, let's talk about that. First of all, though, Liz, where are you and where are you from?
Well, I am from the most beautiful state of Oregon, so West Coast all the way. And I'm living in Germany, and I have for a number of years, and very happy about it.
Okay, cool. What's your thoughts on AI's future? Future in recruitment?
I think it will certainly help us. I mean, you guys were talking about it at the beginning, but also in the last call about scheduling, getting a little bit of that, let's say, the administrative function that is recruiting, getting us away from those stupid Excel sheets that I must say we still do use, and can really replace some of that more menial work to that now saying, okay, helping us with the statistics. And as a psychologist, I would have really enjoyed some of those things when I was learning statistics. But to say, okay, how can we make those predictive analytics as to, how are markets changing? Where are people moving? What are those skill sets that we need? I'll take an example from automotive. Where are those powertrain electronic engineers that we need so desperately? How do we change the majority of mechanical engineers into at least mechatronical engineers so that they can future focus with us? And so I think here, using some of those predictive pieces that AI can get us now will help us. I see the movement. I'm just kind of sensing, here, how will intelligent software, and I think that's really going to be that next stage of AI, is can it help us make better decisions? Because I really do think that the human is very important in all of these pieces, because exactly like Hung said at the beginning, it's at the end of the day, there's still going to be human interaction. And so it's that piece to say, how can we get humans working together with AI to be better around judgment work, and really saying, okay, what are those skills? What are those capabilities? What really is our innovative advantage that we really have a benefit?
Have you heard of the term? Have you heard of the term the centaur worker?
I have. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I haven't. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk. You know what a centaur is, Adam? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
You're not entirely ignorant of Greek mythology, are you? No. Okay, excellent. So a centaur worker is basically an AI augmented human worker. So imagine the horse part being the AI, and obviously the torso and head and all the rest of it that's the human. So all the power, all the energy, and all that type of stuff is actually done by a machine. But you still got a human actor at the end of it being powered by it. You can just go 100 mile an hour instead of 24 mile an hour. So anyway, that's kind of a term I learned recently. I kind of liked it. So. Yeah.
I like it. I like it a lot. Let's come on to another term that we were talking about. So blind hires. Let's talk a bit about blind hires. Hung, you've got some views on this particular subject.
Yeah, I do. And in fact, my product is inherently about blind hiring. WorkShape is all about trying to connect people to opportunity without using biographical identifiers in the traditional sense. It's all about, for us, it was all about visualizing what this person wanted to do and mapping it against what the needs of the company were. Blind hiring, I think, is perceived to be, even though we didn't really design it to be kind of a diversity product, really, but it's now perceived to be something that potentially could be a solution towards all of these inherent biases and unconscious biases that we all kind of agree is part of how recruitment works. So I can see there's a lot of kind of moral reasons to do it, and I can see there's some value to it, even though I can also see a counter argument and some skepticism around it, because at the end of the day, a human being is still going to be making the decision yes, no, and maybe that person is entitled to make that decision, irrespective of what sort of biases are percolating in their kind of mind at the time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Liz, from a psychology perspective, what's your view on this?
I think it's definitely helpful to say, what are those biases? It's always the question of, are biases also built into some of the machines, or what we're asking in terms of questions? And there's that piece to say, are we looking at the functional technical skills, or are we looking at what are some of those broader skills in terms of collaboration? Only going for conflict or compromise, or is that true collaboration in that person so that they're able to get that creative flow, particularly as we look to virtual work teams? So I think there's going to be an evolution. I agree to say bias based, and really looking at what are those functional technical skills, what are those expectations around the roles, but then also saying what are some key differentiators and what are some success factors for what we're trying to look at, and how do we revert those back as to, is this a value fit and culture add that this person will bring if they're joining the teams? So that would be my take on that.
Very, very intellectual. We've got too many exciting people to bring onto this, and I'm actually going to substitute myself for Billy just now, who's also going to bring in Bill Burman, who was very sadly missing from the last session. He was waiting for a link from me or something, and I had to tell him that he needed to understand how to use social media. So I'm gonna bring myself off just now, and I'm giving Bill the subject.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to invite anybody in, Adam. So, but hi guys, nice talking to you.
You're the man in charge. There he is.
There we go. Oh, he's come. Adam's worked it out. There we go. Well done. Well done. So, I think the brief I've been given is for Bill is we're going to talk about Trump in May. I'd quite like to talk about Boris first and talk about his plan for a bridge over the channel, and to see how much sense that makes to everyone. That seems to be the latest update as well. But I was reading earlier on that actually there was a proposal for a bridge over the channel in 1981, but it was just deemed to be too much of an expense at that time, which there you go, that was 1 year before I was born, just to make you all feel very, very old. So Bill, what's your latest? You're never shy at letting us know what you think about Trump and May and all that. What's your latest thoughts on that wide world, and actually have you read Fire and Fury, and anything interesting from that you want to talk about? Can't hear you, Bill. No.
And I'm going to certainly keep quiet on that question.
Hung or Elizabeth, do either of you have anything? Oh, Bill's on mute. Right, hang on. I can't change it.
That's awesome. See, analog still works.
Hang on. Yeah. Nope. Yeah, it's because I'm not a organizer, so I can't change Bill. Hang on. I liked Bill's improvisation there, but there we go. Let's see. We'll try and get that sorted out if someone can log in, perhaps, and try and fix that. But Elizabeth, you probably do have a unique view. If you would like to comment on what's coming out, from the latest fallout of Fire and Fury, but then I suppose the kind of wider impact of Trump policy on the markets, what will happen, what you're expecting to be the impact on the wider economy and the jobs market in 2018.
So first off, I'm not a huge proponent of Trump. So I think one of the challenges is that this is that authenticity and that truthfulness kind of discussion, and also this piece of where do you get your news and how do you really see and view the world. I'm disappointed perhaps in the Democrats. I want it to have a total leadership change, that we have a really strong different party to be able to come into place to really change the world in a paradigm. Because right now I think the effect of Trump is really getting us to question real information, but also to say, is there a really true third party? People now are not going to go out and vote, and this is a real problem. There were some really interesting interviews from Ralph Nader, I think in June, really around what is the effect and how is this really carrying out on the world stage, what's going on with Putin, what's going on, here North and South Korea are now coming together, which is great. So it's a very interesting effect. And I think it will have a big difference in terms of the world market. Are people really going to be engaged? Are people becoming more psychologically scared, so they're converting and going back to themselves? Yeah, there was a great march and everyone had these really cool hats on, but what really truly changed? And I think there's hopefully going to be a change out of that to say, what type of society, what type of environment do we want to create as humans and become more purposeful? And so my hope is that through this extreme, we'll get something better.
Absolutely, and I think we've now got Bill unmuted as well. There we go.
Figure out how it works. So maybe this month, I think the word "egg meets face" comes to mind immediately after his last social media comment. Really, so nice one. Okay, yeah. So you were asking about Boris wanting to build a bridge, which I thought was kind of an interesting one. The man who wanted to lead the separation of us from Europe wants to build a bridge to Europe, which is kind of maybe sums up the rubbishness of it. But maybe we shouldn't talk too much about politics or Trump or anything like that, or we'll all get depressed and angry and that kind of thing on a Friday afternoon. I'd quite like to talk to some of the stuff Hung was talking about earlier, because I think he was off the mark a little bit.
I'm never off the mark, Bill.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried. old-fashioned printing presses and burning spinning wheels or something like that. With kind of a Luddite approach, and I'll tell you where I come from this. And it's something that I'm going to be speaking about at a few events coming up. First of all, I talk about one of the points. One of the things I think when we're talking a lot about AI, really all we're talking about is automation and machine learning. We're not talking about AI at all. We're not talking about artificial intelligence at all. And we're misinforming a lot of the people listening in. What we should actually be, artificial intelligence for me is machine decision making. Machine learning is machine learning recognition patterns and recommendation, which I don't think is AI. And that's a lot of what we're talking about when we're talking about what we were, which is automating the hiring process. Automating tasks, which makes a lot of sense. The bit where I think we need to have a fair and a proper discussion around going into the new year is the what I'm going to be speaking about the Unleash events is it is automated morality. If we're using machine learning to learn human patterns and replicate them on scale, on volume, and at speed, all we're going to do is take all of our inefficiencies as humans and put them on steroids and ping them out. I'm also a little concerned that when we're having conversations about things like blind screening, we're focusing on the wrong area. What we're talking about there is diversity and diversity numbers, when actually what we should be talking about in our organisations is inclusion and how we make our organisations more inclusive, which I think is a much deeper issue. I think once you have inclusivity, then you start to get diversity. What we're doing is proposing sticking plaster solutions to what's not the real problem. And the real problem lies in, I think, things like algorithmic morality and how we want to use machines, that we want machines to make recommendations and behave in ways different to human beings rather than the same as human beings, just on scale. And I think that discussion is much more important when it comes down to it. Be glad to talk to Hung about that or answer any questions that you've got.
Come back to that was quite. That was quite an interesting point, though, you made about the difference between diversity and inclusion. Just before we kind of continue on with the automation side, do you think that employers are confusing the two? If so, then why are they confusing the two? Or is it just that it's a kind of chicken and egg scenario where they're not sure what comes first?
Well, I think the HR recruiting, talent acquisition, which is my world. I can't speak for the whole world of business, but in my world, the approach to diversity is one of compliance and legality rather than morality. I think that's the first thing, rather than actually saying, it's a lot of compliance and doing things because we have to. I think that's the first point. The other point is, if we have diversity without inclusivity, if we introduce a diverse range of people to organisations, even if we get them to the point where people who are, if you want to call it different to the average, are hired into organisations, you're actually introducing them into hell if you don't have inclusivity. And if you have inclusivity, the brand that comes out of that and the reputation and the way that you're represented in the market and the way that you work actually creates an automatic diversity. And a lot of what I see, especially in things like the employer branding space, when it comes to diversity initiatives, are absolute nonsense, right? It really is it reminds me of I don't know whether you remember a few years ago, Ford in Dagenham whiting out the Indian faces because they wanted for the German market because they wanted to look like all white employees, and it feels like that. A lot of the employer brand activity feels like, and I know Hung's been talking about conference lineups being the same, where we've kind of gone down the route of let's pigeonhole a woman because we don't have a woman on the poster, or let's push someone in on a wheelchair and get them in front of a picture, rather than saying, actually, you know what we need to have is inclusivity, and our branding should just be reflective of our environment. And if we've got the inclusivity bit right, and that's where we should be focusing all of our efforts on making sure our workplaces are inclusive of people, regardless of their gender, their their orientation, if they're transgender people, Indian women, whatever it is, if we created inclusive workplaces, diversity would just be a natural byproduct. So I think we're focusing our attention and efforts in the wrong place.
Well, and it's a huge differentiator in terms of, are you innovative? You know, and that's a piece of how can you avoid groupthink by really having a diverse but also inclusive organization where you can get that creative flow of people challenging each other and making things better.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I'm going to be talking about at the Recruitment Agency Expo, I'm going to be really upsetting a lot of people, I think, with the talk I'm going to do, not surprisingly, is the moral responsibility of the recruiting and talent sector. And I think what we've managed to do is everything has been focused for the last 2 points of view. If you're a recruitment agency, it's been entirely focused on profit and nothing on morality or impact on society. And I think that's one area we've got to go away and think about if we want the agency sector to be relevant. And I think from a talent acquisition point of view, and even an HR point of view, we've been so busy trying to get a seat at the table and having conversations like, oh, we have to be relevant to the business, we have to serve the business, we have to speak in the language of the business. We've actually forgotten the people. We've totally forgotten the people element of what we're doing, and rather than being there to represent ourselves, being there to represent others, really, in kind of a selfless way, really. And I think that's what we're missing in all the decisions that we're making, that the focus is entirely on the company and not on the people. And what we've created is a workplace or a work environment. And from an agency sector, I've been guilty of it as much as anyone else in my agency past, of creating things like 0 hours contracts, creating a very uncertain workforce, creating a lot of issues and a lot of problems naturally, and really creating an environment with zero inclusivity of anyone who's different in some way. I think we need to actually take a break and start looking at it from a moral standpoint and say, what should we be doing to make, what's our moral responsibility to make this stuff better, and how do we use technology to do that? How do we use technology to enable people to communicate, for the right people to get hired in organisations, for people to be able to be judged on the right things and not the wrong things? And how do we get people selected on the right things, and not the fact that you're a woman who used to be a man, or a man who used to be a woman, or you wear a turban, or whatever it is, that we actually select people for all the right reasons. And I think our use of automation and the way we're going with technology, we're actually going further away from that rather than closer. And I think we need to take a dramatic hard stop and rethink what we're doing. This year's going to be a firebrand year for me. I'm going to I've got a lot of speaking engagements at places where I'm not going to be holding the horses on what I think about the shit show we've created in the recruitment industry.
I mean, it does, as we move into an environment, as we progress on through 2018 and onwards, and as we see the rise of automation in the workplace, I think that my view is a lot of the roles where you can take advantage of people are going to disappear.
That I'm really thinking passionately about, and I'd be especially interested in what Hans got to say to this. What I'm seeing is, let's take something that we understand from the recruiting sector. If an organisation is evaluating a matching software, so a selecting software that's going to select candidates rather than having sources and people doing that, the way in which they evaluate whether that software works or not is they take a whole bunch of CVs, like they'll take maybe 100, 150, 500 CVs, 1,000 CVs, whatever, and they'll take a bunch of jobs, and they'll take what they consider to be their best recruits, and they'll match those jobs to those people, and they'll come up with a shortlist in a traditional way. What they'll then do is put that same data through the machine to create the same shortlist, and they'll decide whether that shortlist is effective or not by saying, does the shortlist produced by the machine look like the shortlist produced by the person? So in effect, what they're trying to do with that is say, can we replace the people and increase the scale and efficiency to get exactly the same output? So it will not make any difference to our hiring, other than maybe the speed and volume at which we do it a little bit more efficiently. Whereas actually what we should be doing is saying, when I go and look at things from, and if I'm looking at genuine AI rather than machine learning, What I want it to do is I want it to produce a list which is completely different to the list which the people produced, and then see how those people perform in the organisations and see if they perform better. But I want to use technology, AI, intelligence, data, whatever it is, to come up with something different to what the people would have done. Otherwise, what's the point in replacing the people?
Hung, what's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a very valid point. The sort of model that Bill described actually is a product right on the top of my mind actually that does this, which basically is there to try and learn from the yes/no decisions human recruiters would make, and then basically that will train the algorithm to make at scale those decisions on a much larger volume. So you can see that product is on the go, and probably will be quite commercially successful, because you can see from a kind of a recruiter's point of view, or a business that wants to try and optimize the efficiency of that recruiting process, that yes, it could potentially replace a few recruiters in my team. So
what we're really doing is trying to save some money by firing some recruiters and doing things a bit faster.
That's definitely a big part of what drives recruitment technology.
We're not making it better. We're not making it better, and that's the bit that I think we've got to do. We've got to start looking at capability and saying, how can we actually make this stuff better? How can we do things that are different? How can we? Because if we don't make decisions that are different, once we automate it, you want to talk about diversity and inclusion. Once we narrow that from color of people, because we're hiring at scale in an automated way and taking human outside judgment of that, we're going to get more and more homogenous organisations, not more and more diverse organisations.
Well, and it's also a question of how do the rules evolve.
Really scary prospect.
Yeah.
And that's
Elizabeth,
exactly organisations, some quite
so
good
sorry,
setting themselves up to do that at this very moment in time. And they're nuts.
So the only thing I was going to say is that piece of how will roles evolve and how will they change, and what's that kind of future skilling and that future capability also to have that integrated of what is that kind of the learning aspect and the learning agility that's going to be necessary, because the role today, I mean, look at us just 2 years ago. Do our roles exist in the exact same way as even 2 years ago? Not at all. And that's that piece of how are we really getting a good assessment of what learning agility and the ability to grow within a different culture, but also to say how is this person or how are these people going to be co-innovators to really help that company make that next leap?
Well, I can tell you how we're not doing that. We're not doing that with interviews. We're not doing that with interviews. Right? So, so the idea that we are going to continue doing what we've always done by interviewing people and by treating people as strangers. I think what we should be, there's certain key things I think we should be looking at as organisations at the moment. One is what's going to be our platform of choice. So I think digital recruiting, the digital battle over the next 18 months, 2-3 years, is going to be over platform. Are you going to be Google? Are you going to be Facebook? Are you going to be Microsoft? I think that's going to be the three key players through mobile devices, and then you're going to build your technology stack to fit up with that. And then when it comes up to assessment, is actually, are we attracting and hiring people in the right way, or should actually we be able to be connecting with everyone we're ever going to need, spend more time getting to know them before we do the hiring? So hiring is by invitation. Let's forget this nonsense of passport control that we do, where we have, we've had a whole discussion on Facebook this week where still people are saying, oh, we have to interview because the candidate has to get to know the company, because the company has to get to know the candidate. We should already know those people if they're in our network. We should already know them, whether we know them in an automated way, because a lot of that conversation is going on in a digital way and we're collecting information and data. We should already know these people and they should already know us. We shouldn't need to treat people as strangers at the beginning of the process. We need to rethink what we're doing and wake up and say, you know what, we're in the 21st century. Let's have a look at all the process. Let's look at all the process that we do and ask why we do it, and how much of it is because we've always done it this way, and how much of this interviewing is creating the problems that we're seeing. And then we're going to take the data from interviews and actually not interview people, but get algorithms to do the same thing. Lunacy.
Yeah. and they're just repeating the same mistakes. Okay, just to finish off there, because we've kind of ran over a little bit in time. Elizabeth, I'd be interested just on the final point that Bill made. Elizabeth hung and in fact Bill as well. You know, how do we then? What's the answer to that? How do we take recruiters out of the process and stop these things from happening that we want to remove as we move forward, while still maintaining a high level of quality in the recruitment processes, and making sure that, you know, we get the right people at the right time to do the job. You know, how can we, if as recruiters we're the torchbearers and we're the people that hold the expertise, what's the answer to moving it forward without carrying all the problems forward?
I think one of the key things is, what is the end in mind? Why is this role? Why is the job? Why is it relevant? And perhaps also questioning, is this something that we need a full-time equivalent? What are those skills, and how will that change? And perhaps going away from the regular just kind of job description as a snapshot of the now, to really say, how will it evolve? How will it change? And then, you know, talking about that customer relationship experience. So within talent management, it's the exact same thing. Do we know our talents? Do we know how they're growing? And can we get a good match to say, okay, this is the next crucible experience that will help you as in your path as you grow. And also perhaps not making the mistake of, just because someone's familiar or good at something, that they wouldn't be interested or challenged with doing something else. So that's what I'd say. Can we get that a little bit better integrated?
Hung, what do you think?
I'm not sure, mate, to be honest. I think we're confronting sort of a future with just a lot of imperfect conditions and a lot of imperfect solutions. The way I see it is individuals that might be able to do something. It's better to do something, even if it is perhaps not 100% complete or 100% perfect. It's almost like you got to keep the end goal in mind. Like, what do you want to contribute towards? And if you can kind of push the marble just a centimeter towards that, then you're good in my book. So my view is, look, we've all got sort of some wherewithal. We've all got sort of networks. We've all got some energy to do this. And yeah, you know, let's see if we can do our part. So I don't have a kind of an overriding universal theory as to where the world's going to be. But I think we all need to put effort into the positive, positive direction, and hope for the best, man. That's all we got. And
Bill, anything further to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think everyone should buy a ticket to True London on the 19th of March. Have an arm wrestle and a fight about this thing, along with Jason Averbuch and a bunch of other people. I think let's just start thinking, and it does apply to the political situation and everything else. Let's start driven by the moral thing to do, and let's start driven by how our work is contributing to the society around us. I think once we start getting driven by that way, we'll start doing things right. And when we start doing things, I sound like an old hippie, but when we start doing things right, I think that will become that we're doing things well. At the moment, we have no idea what good looks like. And therefore, we're building recruiting processes which are hit and miss at best.
Great. Well, listen, thanks very much to everyone who's joined us today. Danny Hodgson, Elizabeth Lembecky, Bill Boorman, Hung Lee, thank you all very, very much indeed. To all the attendees, hope you enjoyed that. If you've got any comments, questions, then why not join the chat on Facebook at Talent Pipe. But thank you all very, very much indeed. I hope you have a great Friday and enjoy your weekend.
Great. Thanks everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.